All right, we're ready.
Okay, then let's go ahead and start this meeting with the pledge. If everybody could stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll move to the approval of the agenda.
Okay, I said I was ready and now I don't have the agenda up. Just a second, sorry. There we go. Madam President, I move that we approve the agenda with the following amendments: additional certified personnel actions for consideration item E3 and add item E4F July board meeting dates.
Okay. Do we need any discussion on that? I couldn't hear that. Oh, I guess we need a second, don't we?
I'll second.
Thanks, Mark. Are we going to go ahead and do the roll call? Voting?
Yes. Are you ready?
Yep,
Ready to vote?
I think so.
Laura,
Aye.
Dana,
Aye.
Janine,
Can't see her.
I just can't hear.
She
Yes.
tried saying aye.
Yeah. If you can read lips, thumbs
Oh,
up.
it's a thumbs up. Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Jennifer,
Aye.
Alex,
Aye.
Okay, I believe that's everybody. Thank you. We'll move on to delegations, Q&A, and public comments. Do we have any of those tonight?
no,
Or correspondence?
no,
Okay. Then we'll go ahead and move on to the consent agenda.
Madam President, I move that we approve the consent agenda as previously amended.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Alex. Do we need any discussion? Okay, I think we're ready for a vote.
Laura,
Aye.
Dana,
Aye.
Janine,
I believe Janine is giving the thumbs up and yes, or aye, sorry.
Mark,
Aye.
Jennifer,
Aye.
Alex,
Aye.
Okay, great, thank you. We'll move right along to curriculum reports, starting with the Board of Education goals update.
All right, Madam President, thank you. You received copies of the board goals in your packet, and then I think Stephanie sent you kind of a revised one here in the last hour or so. If you could look at either of those, we're going to, my leadership team, we're going to take turns kind of responding to the 5 goals, reporting on the 5 goals that the board has identified as being priorities, and then we'll hit on a few others as we go through those as well. So I think Glenda's going to start us off with 1.8. Glenda, are you there?
Yes, I'm ready. So
All right.
1.8 is the AVID goal. And this year we had lots of training that was very, very well received, including a visit to an AVID certified school. Lots of folks went to that one and absolutely loved that training and that opportunity. The sad note is this summer, the Summer Institute was canceled. So we are waiting to see what will happen with that training and then try to figure out from there what our next steps are. We definitely want to continue some type of training in the future and continue the good work we started this year. All of our schools did complete a coaching and certification instrument. It's called the CCI, and it's completed at the end of the year. And then the folks at Avid take a look at that and give us a recognition on how we've done. We do expect our schools to get some level, probably 1 and 2, so just the initial steps in that building certification, but that is definitely a good place to start. So that is the Avid goal. Are there any questions about that? Okay, I will go on to one. Yes.
I have a quick question.
Okay.
Well, was there any kind of, did they provide any kind of method of doing like a before after evaluation of like maybe, and I don't even know if I'm thinking about necessarily the educators or even the students involved in those programs? Is there?
Oh, yes, absolutely. That's a good question. They actually have a rubric that our schools look at and use to move through the Avid certification process. It includes what the students do, including keeping their goals, their notebooks, and the skills that they're learning. So that is part of that process. And the rubric walks you through each of the areas for Avid. So we can see exactly where we ended one year, where we're starting the next, and where we've gone from there.
Okay, thanks.
1.9 is rigorous and challenging academic experiences. Our students seem to really take a liking to Fast Forward, one of our newer programs for ELA reading. They're all showing, many of them are showing growth, some up to a full year, or there's a couple that have shown even more growth than that. Our math this year on our district-wide assessments was showing an increase. And if you look at the trend patterns, we're showing a level 3s and 4s on the state assessments, we're showing an increase. Now, again, like Avid, state assessments were canceled this year, so we won't have that growth or trend data to look at for this year. We are working on the ELA pacing guide and common assessments. One of the things that we're getting feedback from the teachers is that this curriculum is going to meet the rigorous expectations that we had for it. They say this is definitely was the right direction that we needed to take for ELA. We also this year adopted new science, music, and art curriculum, and all of those curriculums were tied to the standards. At the high school, just some numbers for you. Each semester we offered 7 AP classes, 34 dual enrollment classes, so dual credit with the college, and 16 honors courses. Yes, Mark?
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted a point of clarification. When you say they were tied to the standards, it says here they're aligned with the standards.
Mm-hmm.
Did we, I mean, I understand alignment, but did we somehow tie performance to the state standards, or is it just simply an alignment?
It's an alignment, yeah. I
Okay.
probably used the wrong word there, but it's an alignment with the state standards.
Okay, I just was wanting to wrap my mind around if we did that. There's been discussion about that in the past with other school districts, so thank you.
Glenda, I also have a question about the new ELA curriculum. And I don't know if you can answer it right off, but I'm just wondering, because I know some of the ELA curriculum did have like an online component. So with having to transfer the style of learning, was it difficult or a little easier with this new curriculum, or the same, or maybe no feedback at this point?
That wasn't a specific question we asked directly tied into that ELA curriculum. However, at one point we discussed looking at our online Edgenuity and our elementary curriculum for reading, our middle and the high school all said, we don't need to use Edgenuity if we're doing virtual because this has a nice component with it. So they turned down an option to look at Edgenuity, which is already built for them.
Thanks.
Heath, I think 2-1.
Yes, ma'am. Madam President, this is Heath. I'll be covering 2.1. The goal is to continue to refine recruiting, hiring, retention practices, and support for teachers, including innovative and traditional approaches to increase the number of high qualified staff in the district. So the COVID situation presents lots of challenges for the personnel office. Probably the first and foremost is the number of fairs that were canceled. We did get to attend a few face-to-face career fairs early on in the spring prior to everything being shut down. That is one of our biggest connections to recruiting and hiring is the face-to-face contact that we get with candidates when we're out at recruiting fairs. So it really has caused us to be very innovative, thinking outside the box in terms of delivering, our package, if you will, for what we have to offer in Garden City. So that's maybe one of the negative things surrounding the results of COVID-19, and probably will be something that will continue to be a challenge moving forward. One of the positives, perhaps, is the number of separations that we've had so far. Those separations being down quite a bit, and separations include retirements and resignations and non-renewal that might be for licensure issues, as an example. So we had 49, as of the 1st of June, we had 49 and a half separations, 34 of those resignations, 13 retirements. We had a person that was working a half time for us re-retire, and then we had 2 non-renewals that won't be returning. Other people are still working on license to fill those. The results of our work thus far have been, we've hired 33 positions, and we currently have 39 and a half positions still open. So if you do the math there, it's not going to equal 49 and a half. Those openings that we have, a lot of those are still carryover positions that we've had in years past, where we've started the year with openings, unfilled positions that we've utilized long-term subs in, and those kinds of things. Those get recycled and are constantly posted. And as I mentioned to the board before, recruiting is a year-long process now, no longer kind of in segments of into first semester into the spring. It really happens continuously. So good news from that standpoint that the numbers aren't quite as high as maybe they have been in the past. The struggle will be, how do we make connections with that inability to reach out and see these folks face to face? So some of the things that we've done is created a digital package that we are sending out to campuses. So we're able to make a lot more connections now that everybody is in the same boat. No longer candidates being able to go to the single one career fair and look for a job, because those simply aren't available. So we've created a digital package that we send out, making contacts with college representatives who would be in contact with candidates, such as student teachers that are looking for a job. That's one thing. We've created a virtual tour of our buildings. Again, in our hiring process, once we get a candidate through that initial screening interview, we like for them to come to Garden City, see us, our facilities, usually if it's early enough, the kids that they're going to be working with in those buildings. Well, now we've done it virtually. So Afton Huck, the HR coordinator in my office, has worked with people from the instruction office and the principals at each of these buildings to create this virtual tour. So at least it gives some semblance to the candidates that they can get on and see, what does this building look like? Who are the people that are in there? So that's been a positive. And even if we do get back to normal, if you will, in our recruiting process, that is something that we'll probably continue to use moving forward. Questions that I can answer for the board?
Hey Heath, have you noticed or have you heard about even the way that we will, maybe that this has affected even the way we offer positions. Do you see any changes in that so far, like distance teaching or like now that we've been working from home, like a different type of flexibility in terms of positions, or like, have you heard anything or?
I don't know. It's not something that we've approached, is going to a full virtual format where we would hire somebody and out of state that would still live at home, potentially in their home state, and still teach a curriculum for us. We're not to that level yet, and I don't know anybody in the state that's approaching that in that manner right now. As we move forward in our planning process, which we'll get to later in our meeting, in terms of our approach and instruction, that may be something that we do look at, because I'm sure there is still hesitation for candidates and their families to be moving, across country, in some cases to a new location, and those kinds of things. So it's certainly on the table for us at some point once we get down our instructional model a little more nailed down to what that would look like. That can certainly be an option.
There's so many other things kind of taking up the news, so a little distracted, but I figured you being in the position might start hearing of different things that might be happening. So
yeah, I meet pretty regularly. We have a listserv with HR people across the state, and we meet every Friday. And so lots of those kinds of hot topics, if you will. How are you guys dealing with this or that? And that one hasn't come up yet. Recruiting certainly has. I do want to commend our people in this office, the work they've done. We started early, I think, thinking outside the box, and are doing a lot of things that other districts haven't done. And we've been successful so far. It's beginning to slow down, certainly, but early on, even with a virtual package, and you talked about offering positions, we've offered more sight unseen positions this year than obviously we ever have, because we've lost that one connection piece to bring people in. So yeah, we'll continue to be open-minded and looking at all those different options to try to give our kids the highest quality teachers we can.
Thanks.
Other questions? Okay, thank you. It's KJ, 2.5 reconfiguration.
All right, so I'm going to review board goal 2.5, which had to do with reconfiguration and whether or not we would want to make any changes to our current configuration, if that would be in the best interest of the district. Heath and I met with the reconfiguration committee quite a bit over this past semester. We were looking at various ways that the district could implement the recommended pre-K, K-5, 6, 8, 9, 12 model. Examples of that and looked at, did we want 2 middle schools? Did we want 3? If we went with 2, obviously we were going to be putting more kids into 2 buildings. So what facility changes and modifications did we need to make? If we went to 3 middle schools, obviously we would be turning something else into a middle school. What modifications and changes would need to be done to that particular building? And then in each of those scenarios, what would all the other buildings need as they absorbed 5th grades and 6th grades moved to other buildings, just kind of what all needed to be in place in each of those buildings. And in doing that, not only were we looking at what was needed at the time to make those grade configuration changes, but possibly what did we need for additional safety and security measures, secure entrances, tornado shelters, things like that. If those could be added at this point in time, that might be a good time to do it. So what would we need and where would we need it? We had made quite a bit of progress. We were probably in the final stages of kind of wrapping up all of the ideas that we had and trying to put a pretty bow on it when COVID happened. And so that's kind of been, it was put on hold for a little while. So we haven't made a lot of progress with that recently, but we had made quite a bit of progress up until then. Any questions on board goal 2.5 with reconfiguration?
I've got a question. Just to review, KJ, you have completed or just started the work with the committee?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the last part?
You are working with this advisory committee?
We were probably in the final stages of it. We had looked at various options, broken into committees multiple times to try and look at those various options, and we were just kind of wrapping up the process to put a package together for the board so that we could present it and show the various options.
Okay, thanks, KJ.
All right, well, Heath or Glenda, do you have who's next? I didn't print my list.
I am next, Glenda.
Perfect.
I'm going to share board goal 3.4, and I'm going to kind of pair it up with board goal 1.5. Both have to deal with social emotional. One is student self-awareness, social emotional, and decision making. And the other one is assessing unhealthy behaviors. This year we did complete the adoption of our social emotional curriculum. We have second step for elementary, and the CCC framework, and the C stand for college and career competencies for the middle and secondary levels. That curriculum has already been ordered and is actually sitting down in the curriculum office. We also have worked on the mental health pilot. This year we served around 120 students. Next year we propose a change in how we do the mental health pilot, partly because we're seeing need in all of the buildings, and Compass also is seeing that need just in who's coming through their door and applying for services. So what we're looking at for next year is that all K-8 buildings will be having a counselor available to them. And depending on how many students they have in their building, that's how much time they have. So we will have 3 therapists that will go across the district and serve all K-8 buildings. We have already identified 111 students to begin the year next year, based on who's already in services and who Compass has in those other buildings. We also were able to purchase Too Good for Drugs and Violence using a grant from Live Well and partnering with Garden City PD and Sheriff's Department. And we also received a grant for a Stop It app, which is a mobile app that students, families, parents, anybody can make a report. This can be a self-harm, this can be a threat, any type of report that they deem as dangerous. And this year we actually had 24 reports in the second semester. One of the things that I found interesting is I actually kind of figured that the Stop It app would not get much attention after we went into home virtual learning, and it was actually quite the opposite, which just showed maybe some of the social emotional needs that our kids have. One of the things that the Stop It company does is they review all of the reports, and if they feel like it is imminent danger, they escalate it. And those escalated reports come to Dr. Carlin and I. And while there weren't a lot, I would say 6 or 7 reports after we went into the COVID-19 situation, all of those were escalated reports. So all of those involve some type of harm situation that the company made a phone call to us and said, can you get somebody over to this house? So I think that was, I think we've made some real strides in how we find students that need help and getting them that help. Questions?
Just to clarify, Glenda, when all the K-8 buildings having a, did you say a counselor or like a district counselor or a counselor from Compass?
It will be a therapist from Compass.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, Glenda. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, sure can.
Okay, good. Helps if the microphone is on. If you have a student that needs those services and say their parents are not willing to allow them to go through those services, what happens at that point?
Most likely we have the parent. So if we have a self-harm referral, for example, and the student has said that they're cutting, for example, we ask them to get some help. It doesn't have to be to Compass, so they could go to any other agency, but we do ask them to go and receive some kind of help and bring something back that they're getting help. So we do follow those situations pretty closely. Our counselors, our in-school counselors also do have regular groups with students as well.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Question.
Okay.
That help from Compass is confidential, right?
Correct.
And so there's a little bit of a, I mean, how do we interact with Compass on that?
When the parents sign a release for us to serve the student at school, for Compass and for the school, so that both parties can talk with each other, that allows us to share information with the teacher. This child is having a difficult time, or these are the strategies that the Compass therapist is working on. But we do ask them to sign a release so that we can share information with the teacher.
And then is it possible for them to get help from Compass and ask that 457 be left out of it?
Yes, that is possible. Most of those receive their services directly at Compass and not in the school.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm. Anything else?
So this is Steve. I think I'm going next on goal 3.5. And 3.5 is grow school partnerships in the community with businesses, industry, GCCC, other school districts, and community agencies which are beneficial to students, community partners in the school. So lots of good progress over this year with that. Probably one of the areas over the last year, maybe a little longer, has been the empirical project, and I think probably the depth and quality of our conversations, connections to industry through the Chamber and EcoDevo, and that one, of course, is still ongoing, and we're in the process of building that pathway to help with workforce in the food service industry there. We have had regular meetings this year with Garden City Community College, I think about every other month, that have involved the major players in the college administration, along with our my leadership team and Mr. Nordby, and I think Mr. Felvis has joined some of those, and Jenny Hands, our career and technical education coordinator. And again, I think the efforts that we've had to or made to collaborate, I think have been reciprocated upon very well over this last year. And the good news, and without stealing anybody's thunder, in a few minutes you're going to hear a presentation about 3 exciting new pathways that will be available to students at Garden City High School and the Alternate Education Center that are partnerships directly with Garden City Community College to make those things happen. So questions on any of that? All right, I think I get to probably go next. And I'm going to report on goal 4.4, which is stakeholder groups. Goal 4.4, continue to utilize stakeholder groups such as the district site council, building site council, school PTOs, and other school committees to enhance public relations and inform decisions. So this is an area that we were recognized in our accreditation visitation team report for doing an exceptionally good job with, given the challenges that large districts face, but just in general. And it is something that we have been working towards to involve more people with information and not just receiving information, but to be actively involved in district decision making. Unfortunately, due to COVID, one of our big pieces with this, our resource allocation process. We were halfway through that when all the excitement came about with the COVID-19 changes. So we suspended that process for this year. Got lots of good information to committee members, had good participation with our committee, but we weren't able to take the step where they helped us with decisions, recommendations coming back to the board about budget priorities due to the COVID situation. We will be sharing some information with you here shortly about our planning process for next year and ways that we will be engaging some of our community members, some of our site council, district site council people in that process. But any questions in that area?
Okay, I have 7.1, which is the Comprehensive Technology Plan. This semester, the tech group passed out 4,977 iPads to our families, along with 150 hotspots that allowed 262 students to have access to the internet. They instituted a hotline for parents and staff to call if they needed assistance. And then they learned how to do online enrollment. And literally, that was kind of building the airplane while it was in the air. So they determined a need, went to the trainings, found out we could do it through Skyward, and got started on it. And to date, we have about 63% of our returning students enrolled. So we're going to start the next phase of that with sending mailings out to some of those families that haven't enrolled yet. They put together 25 trainings, and that was live trainings or Zoom trainings, in addition to a number of videos that they did for staff on how to teach virtually. This summer, they're going to add 1,900 more iPads to our collection, and those will help serve all students grades 2 through 12. That is our anticipated group that we're hoping to be one-on-one next year. So that will be a bit of a deviation from our plan, but we feel that the need is there to make sure all students have an iPad in their hands next year in case we have to go back and forth. With that, they also noticed that a lot of our students, even if they didn't have internet, found a place to go for internet. Like the high school, you can go in the parking lot and get internet access. So this summer they will be adding 4 access points: Horace Good, Bernadine Sitz, Buffalo Jones, and the transportation office, to maybe make that internet availability a little easier for some of our families. Any questions on that? Okay, I think that's it for the goal updates.
So, Madam President, the board received a copy of a written report of updates on all the goals. We've picked about 8 or 9 tonight to kind of update you on. Again, 5 of those were the key 5 that you've identified, but we certainly are willing to answer questions on any of them, or delve into any of the others that we've talked about if you want to discuss any more in detail.
I'll open it up to the board. Does the board have any other questions on the goals update? Mark?
I'm just expecting we will get to this. But of course, the whole COVID-19 experience so far has illuminated not only challenges, but also some real successes and maybe even a little bit of both excitement, but also frustration in the whole remote learning environment. So there's some things to review there that I think are very germane to goals in the short term. I mean, not 5 years from now, But in the 6 or 7 goals that we choose for the superintendent to focus on for this next year, just kidding, Steve, whatever we ask him to focus on, you know, there's a lot of work that's been done and a lot of discussion yet, Madam President, on how to move forward next year and sort of balancing this remote learning with the social emotional adjustments that are provided in what we hope we're able to do in-person learning. So there's just a bunch of discussion there, and I'm anticipating we're going to get to that. But it certainly factors into how we spring forward from the presentations we have this evening.
Thanks, Mark. Anybody else? Okay. I think we can move forward if that's okay with everybody.
Madam President, I do need to do one more thing. Sorry, I forgot to do this. On the goals, if you'll notice on goal 5.3, and I just want to call the board's attention to, I think when we reported on these back in January, there was an edit that we intended to include. That was the reason you got the later one tonight. My oversight, and that hadn't gotten attached. But if you look in under goal 5.3, January 2020, goal 5.3 deals with student safety and security plans. And one of the suggestions was to highlight that, to include that we had developed a water monitoring protocol for our rural schools consistent with direction from the Kansas Department of Health and Environment. And that wasn't included on the earlier draft that you got, but we intended that to be included, so that is here. And I just want to call your attention to the fact that that has been added, but it was added because it was discussed at the meeting back in January. So it's under the January 2020 report. We highlighted it in the latest one that Stephanie sent out. We'll take the highlights off in the final draft. Sorry, I forgot that.
Thanks for highlighting that. Does anybody have any questions or concerns about that? Okay. I think we'll go ahead and move on then to the Auto, Carpentry, and Cosmetology programs, the Alternate Center.
That is me, and they're actually at the high school and the Alternate Center, both. So I'm going to share my screen. I've never shared my screen before, and it's not. Sorry. I don't know what you're seeing, but I don't have anything. Sorry, I don't know how to share my screen with you, so I guess you won't see the PowerPoint presentation, but it was just pretty anyway. We have been partnering, Dr. Carlin already talked about that or alluded to it earlier, with Garden City Community College quite a bit. Been working with them over the last few years pretty closely to get some visions made into reality, and it's exciting because 3 of those are coming together for next year. So we have partnered with them. We're proud to partner with them and proud of the relationship that we're developing. And so my first slide says, why should we partner? And the main reason is our partnership gives us more opportunities for our students. And that's the reason that we do anything. But we also accomplish more by combining our resources, which might be space, it might be equipment, it might be the instructor. And also on my end, it does increase our CTE statistics and makes me look better. Our post-secondary success rate and our concentrators who earn a credential prior to graduation, both of those we expect to increase when we have more programs and opportunities for our students. So the first program that we are excited to be starting next year is a manicuring program. And sometimes people think that I've said manufacturing, manicuring as in nails. It is surprising that we are doing this just because on the high school end, cosmetology is not considered career and technical education, but at the college side it is. So we've had some interesting just lines to learn about through that. Most of the times our programs can be pretty well aligned, but this will be very new for us at the secondary level to be doing anything with cosmetology. But in fall of 2020, we will be beginning manicuring. It'll meet daily from 12:30 to 3:30 for the entire year. It'll be located on the community college campus. Originally, we had thought maybe they could come to Garden City High School, but manicuring, if you hadn't thought about this, requires very, very special ventilation because it can get very stinky in there. We want to keep our kids safe, so they have that at the college. So it will be located on the community college campus, and the instructor will be provided by Garden City Community College. And students from Garden City High School, Garden City Alternate Education Center, and Holcomb High School will all combine together for that class. Over the 2 semesters, they will earn 10 credit hours, 10 college credit hours, and they will also earn their manicuring credential. And once they turn 18, they will be able to complete the Kansas Board of Cosmetology licensure process. So they will be able to begin working as soon as they finish the program, or they can continue to move on in the cosmetology program at Garden City Community College, and they'll just be one step ahead of the other students entering after graduation. The awesome thing, there's a lot of awesome things about this, but one of the most awesome things is that this program is entirely free to our students. We're using, it qualifies for what we call SB 155 funding, which allows certain select classes to be free. And that is why we picked manicuring to follow and try to make it happen. I did look up, just for fun, I thought you might want to know, the Bureau of Labor Statistics. The average salary for a manicurist in Kansas is $25,140, or about $12.09 an hour. So that's something that students can, you know, the way I look at that, I had a friend in college who completed, it was cosmetology. She could cut hair, not manicures, but she did that during night school, during high school, and graduated. And then while we were in college, she paid for college by cutting hair. And it's a higher paying job than she could find anywhere else. So anyway, that is manicuring, our first exciting opportunity this year for students. Also exciting is Automotive Technology will be beginning in the fall of 2020. Semester 1, they'll take automotive safety orientation, and semester 2, they will take brakes. Not take brakes, you know, but take the class learning how to work on brakes. It will be at the Alternate Education Center, and Garden City Community College will be providing the instructor. They will meet every day from 8:20 to 9:50. And as we start this program, it is only open to students at the Alternate Center. We are hoping that next year we will be able to expand to where we can bus students from Garden City High School to the Alternate Center to complete the program, but we are just starting small this year. Again, students will earn 10 credits over 2 semesters, and the Bureau of Labor Statistics data, the average salary in Kansas for a mechanic is $40,850, or $19.64 an hour. Students would still need some more classes after this year to make that salary, but it's a great start, and these classes are also free to students. And our final exciting opportunity is a carpentry program for our students. It will begin also this fall. located on Garden City Community College's campus. And it will meet daily from 12:30 to 3:30 for the whole school year. So that's the same time as manicuring. So our students will be there, all at the same time. Our hiring committee is working on selecting an instructor. I'm privileged to have been invited by the community college to be a part of that committee. And so we are down to 2 finalists, and we are hoping to have a finalist selected very, very soon. Students from Garden City High School, Garden City Alternate Education Center, and Holcomb High School will all be allowed to participate in the class. And this class, students will earn 18 credit hours over 2 semesters. That is significant. They will earn their NCCER credentials, which is an industry standard credential. It's recognized all over the nation. They have a certificate. They can travel from in any state, and it is recognized. Again, because of SB 155 funding, the program is entirely free to students, and whatever costs that does not cover, Garden City Community College is covering. And that was like a tool belt and other supplies like that Garden City Community College is covering. Between Garden City, what's different about this one is between Garden City Community College, the Holcomb School District, and USD 457, we are sharing the cost of that instructor. And the Bureau of Labor Statistics data for a carpenter is $42,670 or $20.52 an hour. And these students will be 100% ready to go to a job site when they are done with their school year, which is a huge need in our community. And we're very excited to begin fulfilling that need and to get students into that program. Anyone have any questions for me?
This is Janine. I don't have a question, but I have a comment. I love these options for kids. I know when we were the kids were doing the buff projects, I sat in and judged several of them or scored them, and there were a couple of them that were looking at these similar careers. One was manicuring and one was looking at carpentry. And so I love that we're going to have these options available for them, and especially at no cost. I think that's just an amazing piece.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, Jenny, I had one. Congratulations on this. It's pretty exciting. I totally agree with you. I'm curious on the alternate high school where we're sort of launching the auto program. Do you have already a sense of student applicants for the program? I would think that would be fairly limited.
Yeah, so the maximum number of students that instructor is comfortable with in this first year was 10. And Mark Felvis said last week they definitely had 6, and they had 4 or 5 more who were interested, but they just weren't quite sure if it was exactly the right program for them. So they're going to fill the class on their own. So we're hoping then that next year we'll have the capacity to have more students, and then we can have students from the high school.
Yeah, very good. Thanks, Jenny.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Jenny, this is Alex Wallace. As far as the carpentry, because I know a little bit about it, but is there a placement program after the carpenters get their license to work with the local general contractors in Garden City, or have we've been able, or the college been able to reach out to the Wichita, Kansas chapter of carpenters? Because anytime there's a big job that comes to Garden City, they usually call the Wichita branch and ask for local carpenters that are in our area to be able to be put to work.
We've been working with the Southwest Kansas Builders Association as we've worked on this project. So they've been very, very involved. And as I've been working with the hiring committee, first of all, we have the president of the Southwest Kansas Builders Association on the hiring committee, and we have made it extremely clear to both candidates that a partnership between the builders in the area is extremely important to us. And we hope to have students on the job sites regularly with different companies in the area or different builders, so that they can get to know the students, and hopefully those partnerships will lead to placement opportunities.
Great. And I know general contractors in our area do have like a summer internship program to get those students involved as early as possible. So when they do top out or graduate, they do have a job placed right away.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Anything else from the board? Jenny, that's really exciting. Just to echo what others have said, like, I'm so excited about these opportunities. I want to go back to high school. I always wanted to do carpentry, so that'll be really awesome. Thank you so much for your presentation and all the work that you've done.
Thank you.
So, Madam President, this is Steve. There's an agreement for the Automotive Technology program for the district to enter into with the community college. If the board is agreeable to doing that, again, there's really no cost involved with this. We're basically allowing the use of our shop space, and the college would be providing the costs for the instructor. There may be some money that we invest in some equipment to get the shop ready. It's under $10,000 probably total for anything we would be doing there. But that's not required in the agreement. So if the board is okay approving that tonight, that would be a good step. We will also have agreements for the carpentry and the manicuring. We just didn't have enough time to get them ready. So they'll be on the consent agenda at the later meeting in June. Again, the carpentry program will be with us, the college, and Holcomb. And Holcomb and USD 363 and USD 457 will be contributing to help offset the cost of the instructor on that agreement. But that one we don't have ready tonight. And then the manicuring one, again, will be similar to the auto one. There's really no cost to the district at all for that one. So again, if it's your pleasure, we are recommending approval of the auto agreement tonight, and the others will be on the consent agenda in late June.
So,
Madam President, if I may, this is Laura. I would move that we approve the Automotive Technology Cooperative Agreement with Garden City Community College.
can I get a second?
Yep.
This is Janine. I'll second it.
Okay. Can we go ahead and do the roll call?
I got a question.
Oh, sure, Alex.
So how does the liability insurance with the college working on our property, how does that work, especially for the auto part of it, Steve?
So they are, they're adding a rider, I believe, to their insurance to cover that, Alex. But I will double check that. But I think that was one of the pieces that we talked about in that, but I will double check that.
Okay, thank you.
Do you want to hold off on a vote until you have that information, or are we comfortable moving forward with the vote?
I'm comfortable moving forward with the vote. As long as we have the insurance piece as far as the liability from other people being on our property.
Yeah, I think that's a great question.
That's particularly why I was comfortable with the language in the agreement that says it will be at no cost to USD 457.
Okay,
I think that would include insurance.
Thanks, Mark. So I think we'll go ahead and move forward with the vote.
Laura,
Aye.
Dana,
Aye.
Cindy,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Jennifer,
Aye.
Alex.
Aye.
Okay, great. So again, thank you, Jenny, so much for your presentation. And I think we'll go ahead and move on to new business and the planning process for 2020, 2021.
Madam President, this is Heath. So we have a PowerPoint that I think Amanda might be sharing for us as we go into this. I'm going to start us off. So we're going to be tag teaming this a little bit. Gwen and I for sure, and other people might jump in as we go through this. Mark alluded to it a little bit earlier in the meeting, just the amount of planning and preparation that not only has been done to this point, certainly on a short time frame. We changed our instructional platform to move it from face-to-face contact to the virtual package in about a week's time. So we're now through that kind of initial stage and getting through the school year, and now looking towards next year with a little more time and waiting for some direction from the state, of course. But we're now moving forward with this planning process, and we're going to share that with the board tonight. So one of the first things is just our timeline. So through this whole process, we've utilized information from our local health department, and our first priority has been keeping our staff and students safe through this process. And I think the board's been made aware of maybe some different levels of restrictions, if you will, in terms of putting in those protections for our staff. So ultimately, we want to get back to normal. And so that's our ultimate goal, is to get back to normal. Hopefully it looks like normal, but that's what we're striving for. And so as the data has come in from Finney County, and we still have some cases out there, obviously, and there's still a number of positive cases that are being identified, those have begun to slow down dramatically over the past several weeks. And so we've been able to start to lift our restrictions that we've had this far in terms of access to the buildings. So right now, today, we've gotten to a new level that we've limited staff coming to the building to essential staff. So each supervisor has been able to identify who it is, who's essential, that needs to be maybe on site, helping with communication, answering telephones. We are allowing limited access by the public as well. And we have some screenings that we've done, these personal protections that we've put in place for not only our employees, but also for the public that may need to come and access our building. So, screening questions are in place for our employees. Those are being asked by supervisors to everybody that's identified as essential that has to be on site. And so we're putting those kinds of things in place. We will do the same thing with any visitors that need to come to the buildings now. So it's by appointment only. And then there's a visitor process that each of these folks would go through. Obviously, you need to make the appointment in advance. Screening questions are in place. Any of you that have either been in the public or running your business may have these same kinds of things in place. Staying out of the building, temperature checks, whether you wear masks. These particular questions are not to see if any of our public members or visitors potentially have any at-risk symptoms. And so we're going through that process right now. And all the while, monitoring what's happening in our community. So that's where we're at this week. Again, we'll continue to look at that data, and then the goal will be to lessen or raise these restrictions one more level starting next week. So at that point, we'll have very few staff members working from home, be fully staffed in our offices. Again, screening for public access, but that's still going to be limited to appointment only. And we'll still have these protection measures in place for our employees. That's been communicated multiple levels. It's been communicated with our supervisors. It's been communicated district-wide so that people know that we have these things in place and we're looking out for their safety and protection. And it's also been communicated to the public so that if someone is needing to access our buildings, make an appointment, they know ahead of time what the process will be moving forward, that they're going to have somebody, talking to them, making contact with them, asking them these questions, checking temperatures, wearing masks. So they know and they're prepared when and if they have to come to our schools. And then lastly, again, if the data supports it in our community, we will be lifting more of those restrictions. Our hope is, our goal date is July 1st. Amanda, would you change slides? Thank you. So things that were...
Mr. Hogan?
Yes, sir.
Hey, I might just add one other thing that came up a little bit in some questions today. So also on June 15th, that day is the day that we will open our outdoor facilities for the public. We have a few groups that use some of our fields for activities and things, and our playgrounds will be open on June 15th, again, for access to the public. And I don't think we had talked about that before.
Steve?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you hear me? This is Dana. Also with that June 15th, since you mentioned opening fields and whatnot, I noticed that a lot of athletics is starting to open training. What does that look like for students?
So Dana, this is Steve. Yeah. So, and that's coincides with that. That's when our summer activities pieces will begin on that date as well. And there is I know a release that parents have to do, and we'll have extra precautions in place in terms of the size of groups and the sanitizing of equipment. There's going to be a meeting, I think, later this week with some of the people from the high school where they're going to walk us through some of the additional precautions that will be taking place with the kids during that. But that you're correct. That also begins June 15th.
Other questions from the board on that first bit of information? Okay, so things that we've taken into consideration and we'll be looking at as we move forward. As you all know, decision making throughout this time period is fluid. And so what you had before is a tentative timeline. Our goals essentially is what we would like to shoot for. And so information that we gather from these different agencies, obviously the State Department, they're working as well to provide guidance. Dr. Carlin's in constant communication with the State Department and Dr. Randy Watson, and they'll be providing more information the closer we get towards school in terms of what the state's direction is. Our local health department, our state health department, they also are providing information. We have a great relationship with our local health department, Michelle Scholl in our health services department. She and several of our nurses have worked closely to support our community and testing. And so we have a nice line of communication with them. And so getting advice in terms of activities that are coming up. An example of that would be the summer activities that Dana mentioned. What should that look like for those summer athletic activities? What should be allowed or could be allowed to happen in terms of graduation? Moving forward, we have CDC guidelines that are pretty restrictive. There's a lot to them. And so we're going to have to be taking a look at those and how do we manage within those guidelines. Just one simple example is a recommendation from the CDC moving forward, thinking about the fall, is if we have a positive case in our schools, their recommendation is closing the school down for 2 to 5 days. And so how do we manage that? What's that going to look like for instruction? What's that going to look like for personnel? And so we'll be looking at those. OSHA has some guidelines. They're not standards yet, and they're not recommendations. They're just guidelines. That safe working environment is obviously what their goal is. And so we'll be considering those things, and then any Kansas Department of Labor requirements that you might get into, both at the state level and the federal level, with the Families First Coronavirus Response Act is something that we have to consider, and how to deal with people that might have infections or exposure, and what that means in terms of leave. Certainly getting input from our staff and community, again, all looking at what is the best decision for us as a major business in our community, and how do we continue to protect not only our staff here, but our community as a whole. Questions? Okay, Glenda's going to talk a little bit about instruction.
So when we started talking and looking at what might be needed for instruction, we looked at the CDC guidelines and some of the other guidelines that are out there. And we know that we're going to be getting guidance from the state. Right now, their tentative date to have that out to us is July 10th. But we really didn't want to wait that long to at least start brainstorming and thinking about some ideas. So we have developed committees to start that work. This week, each of the different levels are putting their committees together. So we have, for instruction, we have the 6 committees. Preschool will be a committee by itself. Andrea Baker will chair that. The elementary committee, this will be our K4 and our K6 buildings. Karen Merle and Linda Finch will chair that committee. The intermediate principals, Gina and Amy will chair that committee. The middle school will be chaired by Matt Byer. Mark Felvis will chair the alternate high school, and Steve Nordby will chair the high school committee. Each group is going to put together a committee made up of the different areas that you see here. So we've asked them to include their teachers, classified staff, instruction coaches, someone from the Office of Learning Services, students potentially, parents and community members, someone from the technology department, and then any other principals that want to share in this work. So we've got quite a group that is building this week to kind of kick off next week formally. One of the things that Heath mentioned was possibly closing the building if we had an outbreak or had a case of COVID-19. So one of the things that we have been talking about are 3 possible options. One would be looking at normal business as usual. However, within that, we can bring everybody back normal. What are the restrictions that we need to keep in place? Will it impact food service, for example? Or can we do business as usual? So having those kinds of conversations. Do desks have to be 6 foot apart? And that will impact how many kids we can have in a classroom. So those kinds of discussions happening. Will normal be normal? The last one over there where I have remote, that would be back to 100% virtual. We can use 712, can use Edgenuity, as I mentioned in the earlier presentation. Our other elementary K6 teachers really felt like the curriculum provided all they needed, so that we would probably not use Edgenuity, but we would use the curriculum we had. And then what will have the most flexibility for our staff? Literally being able to possibly have to go from being in building one day to virtual the next. And what does that look like? And one of the things I have there, one of the bullet points is recorded lessons. So with some of our committee work and some of our curriculum work this summer, preparing some lessons that we may need on short notice, that we can, flip out, so to speak, and do a flipped classroom from one day to the next. And then in between, there might be some blend of that, some virtual, some in building, Do we have to follow a class size requirement? What do we do if there's a COVID outbreak? Those could all look at some form of virtual. One of the things that we're looking at, what if parents want to do some virtual classes and some in-building classes? And I've already had some parents reach out and say, we're willing to do Edgenuity for the course, but we want to come to school for the electives, and are we going to be able to do that? So that's already a conversation that is happening as well. Any question on those approaches?
If I can get mute off. Just a quick question. Those are pretty impressive committees, and there's a lot of work there, a lot of overlap in communicating, and a lot of volunteerism. What's the time frame of those committees? It's relatively short, isn't it?
You know, one of the things that I have heard repeatedly is this is a bit overwhelming. When we were told that we were shutting the buildings down and had to go virtual, we did it in essentially a week. So timeline wise, I guess we're gifted with approximately a month, but some of our committees are a little hesitant to go too fast, because then we may have to change some things pending the guidance from the state. So you really think if the state comes out in the first part of July, then we have the month of July to really hit it hard and get everything ready by the first part of August.
Wow.
And Mark, we'll share a little more information on the total timeline on this here a little later in the presentation too.
Okay, and then as far as numbers within each committee, you know, a smaller committee is more nimble, larger committee is more representative. Do you have a sense of total numbers?
Most of the school committees, they're just now starting to turn in their membership to me. The middle school is looking to be about 15. So what they're doing is they're having one middle school committee so that we have that continuity between the buildings. So we've got 4 teachers from Horace Good and 4 teachers from KH. And then we've got parents from each building, a counselor from one building, and ELL teacher from another. So we're trying really hard to blend those together, but yet keep them manageable. One of the things, and you kind of alluded to the work there, Mark, one of the things that has been absolutely amazing, though, is no matter what we're faced with or how difficult or overwhelming we think it is, people are volunteering to the point where we're saying, we got enough on this committee, how about helping on this one? So lots and lots of offers to help.
That's great.
Yeah, we have a fabulous staff.
Well, again, I got to say it here, we have fabulous leadership for the district too. So thanks for all your work on that.
Madam President, this is Heath. So more committee work. This might be just a larger committee. Glenda's dealing with instruction, and this is really more surrounding operations, logistics, if you will. So each one of our departments, personnel, facilities, food service, technology, and transportation will have a subcommittee, and they'll be addressing a lot of those kinds of things that I mentioned earlier. You know, safety for students, safety for our staff. If there's policy, procedure work that needs to be done, how is that impacted? The department that I don't have necessarily highlighted that's going to be ingrained in probably all of these committees is our health services department. And so that department will kind of be working through this fluid communication, if you will, as we're going through each one of these. So again, considerations, things that we're thinking about. I didn't mention this earlier. I talked about FCCRA. That is the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. And essentially, for those of you who aren't familiar with that, it's an extension of what FMLA is. Based on COVID situation, they've extended that and have set precedents or guidelines that need to be followed. And so when we start looking at staff or, again, possible infections or exposures, how do we handle that within, you know, each one of these departments essentially? And so there'll be work from each one of those groups kind of around their specific areas, and then all of those groups coming together to just talk about, at a district level, what does this mean in order to provide reassurance to our staff that they're, safe coming to work and that we've thought about these things, but also some consistency in our decision making, that we don't have different things happening throughout different departments. Questions?
Which one of these, and maybe it's a little bit in all of them, will mental health issues fall under? I know that's been a big concern for a lot of parents and other community agencies. Is that something that's going to be addressed in committees?
Yeah, I think, again, you'll see in a little bit how fluid each one of these are going forward. But that's certainly, from a staff's perspective, what does that look like? Providing that safe work environment might be that mental health aspect, that it's, lowering someone's anxiety because of whatever this approach might be. If it's normal, if it's blended, if it's at home, the issues that come with that. And so that's the beauty of having a lot of people involved, is we're getting lots of different perspectives on not only what we learned from the last 2.5 months, but how do we take those, good things moving forward? How do we take those challenges and deal with those so we can make a better work environment for everyone?
Amanda is going to pull up a different slide, a couple of slides for us that may help. So, board members, I think you got a file from Stephanie in an email late this afternoon, and it has this, so you can either see it on the screen, or you can perhaps pull it up on your devices. So we've tried to kind of graphically illustrate how this will work, and Mark, it may help a little bit with the idea of the numbers that are involved, and I know that may be a little hard to read on your screens. So we really have a number of different committees. The first one at the top of the page there, we're calling our Select Vision Team. This will be a group of about 20 people. It will include community members, teachers, principals, some of our, like a classified director, somebody from our technology department, our representative from health services, and this group will meet starting tomorrow. They'll have their first meeting, and they'll meet once or twice a week, and their role is really to guide the work that the other committees are doing. To take all of the recommendations that come from the CDC, from the Kansas Department of Labor, from KDHE, from KSDE, and to use that guidance to help set parameters around how we want school to look and how we want things to happen in Garden City. Underneath that group, you see an instruction committee and an operations committee. So Glenda will lead that instruction group, and Heath and KJ will lead that operations group. And then flowing out of those, you can see like below instruction, there's a pre-K, there's an elementary, there's an intermediate, there's a middle level, there's a Garden City High School, there's an alternate school, and then there's a Jumpstart group. And then kind of under that operations committee, there's an HR personnel issues, there's a facilities group, a food service group, and my eyes are failing me, a tech group, a transportation group, and then health services. So if we go back to the instruction side of things, that elementary group will really be planning for what is elementary going to look like. And we're going to need to give them enough direction that they can be effective and that they're not wasting time in planning for things that can't be done. But we don't want to be so limiting that we're telling them exactly what it has to look like. So that role of that select vision team will be to guide that work. Initially, we're thinking there's 3 approaches. So Glenda laid those out for you in the presentation. And we're going to ask each of those committees to prepare the plan for what will elementary school look like, or what will middle school look like, or what will services at the alternate school look like under each of those approaches. Now, there's a whole bunch of questions underneath each of those. For example, if you're in an elementary school, what's going to happen when kids show up at the beginning of the day? What does lunch look like? What does recess look like? And under each of those approaches, the answer may be slightly different. There's also a whole bunch of academic components to consider. So we're hoping to get some guidance from KSDE about what are the most critical standards and what are the best ways to measure progress with those. But how we deliver that academic instruction will be a part of the work that they do. But I'm going to give you an example of a question that very likely will come up. From the work we did this spring, in some of the feedback that we collected, we heard from parents, especially parents who have students at multiple levels or multiple schools, that they really wished that the district had selected one common standardized communication method to communicate with parents. We also got feedback from teachers that they really appreciated the opportunity to select and use the communication method that they were most familiar with, or that they thought fit their situation and was best for their situation for their students and their families. Well, obviously, we can't do both of those things. So one of the roles of that select vision team will be to make that determination and then make sure that our committees understand that that's a parameter, whatever that decision is, that's a parameter that they need to work within. We anticipate that there will be questions that will come up by the committees that will have to flow upwards through the diagram to get answers. And then there obviously needs to be good ways for those answers to flow back to the committees. So if you look at that middle level, that while the select vision team is focusing more on guidance and parameters and will ultimately compile the plan, that middle level is focusing more on coordinating the efforts, interpreting those parameters, making sure the questions get to the right places and answers get to the right places. And then our committees, they're in the middle of the page, they're focused mostly on the details. They're what it really takes to put this into practice. Specifically, what curriculum is going to need to be written, what procedures or practices need to be planned for and put in place in order to make this work. Glenda's told us there's probably around 15 people per committee on the committees under instruction. Heath will probably have similar numbers under the ones, Heath and KJ, under the ones in their area, maybe some bigger, maybe some smaller, depending specifically on what their topics are. But the idea is that we want to focus those efforts so that our planning can be efficient, but yet we also want to allow our committees to have the opportunity to think out of the box and to come up with innovative solutions that will best fit the needs. So hopefully this diagram helps kind of develop an understanding for what that will look like. I will be honest with you, there's some pieces we haven't done before. This kind of vertical and horizontal communication, we don't have the exact answer for what's going to be the best way to do that right now. So we're going to be working with the committee leaders in these, the team leaders in these, to kind of work that out and finalize that. We know what needs to happen. We just need to kind of find the best way to make sure that happens and to value the work that is going to go into this. So if we move one page, please, Amanda.
Steve, could I ask a quick question?
Sure.
And at the risk of you heading to already answer the question, but first of all, it's a great diagram to think from. I'm just kind of wondering, when you make the example illustration of the feedback from both directions, both people being grateful for finding what works best in their methods of communication versus others who gave feedback that they wished there would have been one platform through which all communications occurred to the home. You know how it is with education. Sometimes if you overly dictate the methodology, you restrict the instruction. Or in the classroom communicating, sort of in this case, particularly if it's virtual. And so, you know, some of that may just be casualties of what we're faced with as a district. But I would hate to see us, it's just comment, I'd hate to see us get overly methodized at the expense of what may work really well in out of one school and set of teachers versus not work so well in another setting. But that's probably some of that horizontal communicating that you were just describing, needing to be effective. So just a comment, thanks.
Yep. Okay, so here's a tentative timeline. So tonight we're presenting our planning process to the board. We finished the school year a couple weeks ago. We had a lot of people that worked really, really hard to get us through probably one of the most difficult times of in my career in education, certainly one of the most unusual events that we've ever encountered. And so we took a little bit of time to let people's brains relax a little bit because I think the stress level and the workload for many of our folks was really high during that continuous learning time. So we're coming back now. Our select team will begin meeting tomorrow, and they will meet at least weekly. Our other committees are beginning to form, as Glenda mentioned, and we're going to ask that each of those committees have a meeting prior to June 18th. For some of them, that'll be no big deal at all. Some of them actually may have, at least in some form, may have already been been meeting and some people have been kicking ideas around. And we would anticipate they will probably be meeting weekly as well. Between now and July 10th is when KSDE has promised us that they will provide guidance. As Glenda mentioned, we'll have a lot of thinking going on, we'll have some planning going on, and that'll kind of be balanced with the idea of we don't want to probably get too far down the road because we may learn something from KSDE, but we don't have a whole lot of time, so we don't want to just hold off until then either. So I think a lot of work, judging what happened in continuous learning, I think a lot of work will happen between now and then. On July 13th, that's the board meeting date that you approved tonight for July, the first meeting in July. We will give the board an update on the progress, what's going on with our planning process. At some point this summer, we're probably going to need to provide some specialized professional development for teachers. This one is kind of an estimate exactly when that's going to begin, but we think it probably needs to begin by about the middle of July in order for, maybe we have some teachers that are going to want to be prepared with a little more time to be able to do more of the remote learning. And so there may need to be some training. Remember when we started this in March, we didn't even get to be in the same room with those folks. All that had to happen electronically. All that had to happen virtually at a distance. It may be other types of training for when we're in the face-to-face environment. But the point being, professional development and having time to have teachers get prepared for what we anticipate coming will be a part of that plan. Right now, we're planning to hold a face-to-face jumpstart with students, and that beginning July 27th. That is maybe subject to a little bit of question based on some of the information and research that we're getting, but if that's going to change, we'll let you know. But also on that day, that would be the board's second meeting in July, and we would plan to present the final plan for what the fall would look like to the board at that second meeting in July. Just for reference, new teachers return to work on August 3rd, or report to work on August 3rd. They don't return. Returning teachers report to work. Their first day is August 6th, and school is scheduled to resume on August 10th with a half day on the 10th. That's a Monday, and then a full day for everybody on the 11th. So as Mr. Hogan said, our hope here is to be back to normal and to be prepared to have school normal when we return in August, but we also have to plan for contingencies if we're not able to do that and what that would look like. One more page, we'll go to the next page. We mentioned there's about 20, I think there's 18 on this list. We have a couple more we're planning to add. And in terms of the Select Vision team members, that the first team we talked about. And I will tell you that Josh Guyman and Steve Nordby have volunteered to kind of co-chair this group. There's question marks there by Board of Education member because we would like to have a Board of Education member participate with this group. This group is, again, planning meetings are scheduled from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Tuesdays. And then we're going to block out that same time for Thursdays in case, because of that communication piece and getting answers to people, in case we need to meet more frequently. The hope would be, number one, that we don't have to meet the whole 3 hours the one day a week, and that if we have to go to meeting on both days, that would reduce the amount of time that this group would meet on Tuesdays. But it would be a time commitment for sure. We will meet via Zoom. At some point, we may be able to do some face-to-face but we're planning to always have Zoom connectivity. And so if you would be willing or interested as a board member to serve on this group, if you would let Dana know, we will record these meetings too, so that if you miss a meeting, and I know it's short notice, 7:30 tonight and 10 a.m. tomorrow. So we certainly understand if on the short notice tomorrow isn't a possibility. But if there's people interested, if you would let Dana know, and the board president can appoint a board member to serve with this group. And again, I think there's a classified staff member that we're adding, and an additional parent that we'll be adding to this group. So that'll give us a group size of 20. So Glenda or Heath, do you have anything else to add? I think we got a few more slides.
Dr. Carlin, this is Laura. I just have a quick question. On the BOE member for that committee, they would be ex officio, correct?
Yeah, because again, I guess I left one part out of there too. So thank you so ultimately that committee will make a recommendation to my leadership team, kind of like we do with resource allocation. And then we'll present you with that plan in late July. So the answer to your question is yes, because the board will have the opportunity to vote on that and approve that as a board at the end of the summer in late July. Glenda or Heath, are you guys still there?
Yes. We ready for the next slide?
Yep.
Okay, so when the state started putting together their committees, they did it in phases, and each phase had a different part of the development. So for example, Monica Diaz is listed there. They reached out to her and asked her if she would be on essentially it's a phase 1 or 2 level in developing the ELA standards. Her work is actually finished now. They finished last week, and phase 3 kicked in. So now phase 3 looks at the resources, the professional development that's been recommended, the standards, and essentially vets, yes, we could make this work in our classroom. We could make this work virtually if we needed to. So we have several teachers that volunteered with the state and then were ultimately chosen to participate in the phase 3 review of resources and professional development. Becca Bernfin for the middle school level, general ed, Linda Taylor for special education, Summer Miller, middle school, high school music, and Wendy Terpstra for communications. Other committees that the state has going, organization and oversight, Dr. Carlin is on that committee, and Charlie Stillion is on an operations and logistics committee. So one of the things that Mark commented about was the people that are working and are volunteering. And I think Western Kansas, but specifically Garden City, is very well represented with the work that is being done at the state. And we're very pleased to have these people step up for us. Other things that we are considering, Dr. Carlin mentioned the Jumpstart. We have a committee that is looking at that and what that would entail, how we would choose the students that could participate in the event that we can't just open it up to everybody because of social distancing. Other thoughts about what about an extended after-school tutoring opportunity? KRR is another opportunity. We just found out recently that 2 of our schools have been partially, not to the same level as previously, but partially funded through 21st Century Grant. That was Florence Wilson and Victor Ornelas have been funded through that grant to continue KRR. Some of the principals have asked about operating extra intervention groups during the day to make up for the COVID, what the kids have missed or fallen behind on. Middle schools and high school, alternative high school, have asked about doing some credit recovery. So they may include a jump start just to do credit recovery. Another discussion point has been, do we want to offer some kind of extended summer opportunity next summer when things maybe hopefully have settled down a little bit more? And then the last point that we're talking about is, what does this do for our technology plan? Does it need to change significantly? And what does that look like? Do we want to increase the number of grades that have computers, iPads specifically? And do we let all kids take them home? If we're going to be able to be fluid and go back and forth in the event that it closes, we almost have to do that. So what does that look like, especially for our little bitties, being able to take an iPad back and forth to home? So lots of other things to consider as we proceed forward. Any questions overall? Okay.
Well, it certainly looks like there is a lot to be done, to say the least. I feel overwhelmed just looking at the charts and the lists. So, wow. So thanks. And I guess good luck.
So, Madam President, this is Steve. Can I throw a little? So we're not asking the board to take any action on this tonight. And we know we've thrown a lot at you. And I think you're right on target. There is a lot to consider, and there's a lot of work that's going to happen. So if the board's okay with it, certainly tonight, if there's anything that comes to mind tonight, we're happy to address any questions or listen to any thoughts. But as you have a little bit of time to look at this and digest this, board members, you can give me a call and give me your questions. Let me know what your thoughts are after you've had a little time to think about it too, because we know there is a lot there. Time is our friend in comparison to what we dealt with in March, but we have about 2 months and we're starting school. So time is, well, it's our friend, it's not our great friend here. And so we are going to get rolling. We've got to get people starting to put some thought into some of these things and think about this. And time is also maybe not our friend from the standpoint of we learn more and more about this situation every day. Others update guidance, and so as we learn more, that's all good. We want that. But 2 months from now, we may learn something that if we'd have known it today, would have drastically changed what our planning would have looked like. So you want to be in a hurry, but you don't want to be in too big a hurry. So anyhow, we've given you a lot of stuff. We recognize that, and knowing that, we want you to have time to think about it, and we can certainly talk about it at a future meeting. But we don't have to wait that long either. So if board members have questions or there's certain things that they want to talk about as they reflect on this, you can certainly reach out to me.
Thanks, Steve. Board, are there any questions or comments?
Just thanks for all the hard work that you guys are putting in and all the I really appreciate it. Keeping us in the loop and informed.
Is that me or is it Alex breaking up?
It's Alex.
Daily basis is very great. So thank you very much for that.
Alex, unfortunately, we couldn't get your message very well. You were kind of breaking up and maybe doing a little bit of slow motion. I don't I don't know if you want to try and repeat or. Okay, he might save that for later. Anybody else?
If I
Did you
could,
get it?
What's that? Go ahead, Laura.
thanks. I'm probably going to echo some of what Alex was trying to
Can
say.
you hear me now?
I'll send him a chat message. Go ahead.
I'm good.
I was just going to say I'm probably echoing some of what Alex was trying to say. Thank you all to everyone who's willing to volunteer to serve on these committees. Looking at the list that we have just of the select committee, it looks like a great group of people who are going to be trying to make some pretty big decisions for us and giving us some guidance as to what's going to be going on. So thank you all. Unfortunately, I just so you know, I can't do it. Between 10 and 11:30 starting next week for the next 3 weeks. That's when we're handling some of our worst cases here, the child in need of care cases. So I'm going to be in court pretty much nonstop during that time frame. So, but I'm really looking forward to hearing what everyone has to say and the report on July 13th.
Thanks, Laura. Anybody else? Okay.
Dana, are we going to have a roundtable, or is this our roundtable?
No, I'll go through the board and give everybody an opportunity to talk.
Okay, thanks.
Is that it for the planning process for now, though? It is a lot to take in, and so I'm sure I'll be sending questions to Steve at some point. But again, just appreciate it. So we'll go ahead and move on to board open discussion. And Mark, you can start us off.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I really don't have much. I have a, it's so difficult to absorb the planning process and the wonderful sort of leadership and structure put to this to the strategic planning in the short term. And of course, we all know as board members and staff, and what we've talked about a lot in our goals, that there's some good that we learned out of this whole process this year. And I certainly don't want to see that go by the wayside in the process of coming up with specific response criteria for preparing for the future. So somewhere we're going to, and it's really in that wonderful set of teams, I think, that the leadership has put together. We want to use what's been success stories and tweak it with our knowledge of capacity and curriculum and the other goals that we're trying to accomplish. And unfortunately, the job just expands instead of contracts when you try to do that. But there's clearly opportunity. And with the Cracker Jack staff that I am confident we have demonstrated, as long as the communication is there, it's going to be exciting to see what we come up with. And just feedback from parents. Again, it was almost teacher by teacher and method by method, and the uniqueness of each child, what worked well and maybe what didn't work at all, and the level of the child's engagement with the curriculum and the parents' engagement. I would think we have, we scored very, very high on our goal of parent-teacher engagement. So again, good stuff. It's going to be exciting to see how the good stuff gets incorporated into what we're just faced with in the variabilities of the future. It's just a comment. I just don't want to see the good stuff go by the wayside, because I think we learned some neat stuff. And I'll just say I'll be willing to serve on that group if my board will let me. That's a time commitment, but I certainly will let somebody else represent the board in that work process. But I want to be considered.
Thanks, Mark. This is my favorite part because I get to play the Brady Bunch. So Laura, you want to go next?
The other thing I was going to mention is that we have a KASB Board of Directors meeting on Saturday. We're doing it by Zoom, so that'll be nice not having to drive all the way to Topeka. But I think I'll probably be hearing about what some of the other school districts are doing, and if I learn anything new and exciting, I'll try to pass it along to Dr. Carlin for the committee as well. So thanks. That's all I've got.
Thanks, Laura, and thanks for the time that you give to represent us on that. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Jennifer? Nothing?
Oh, nothing. It wouldn't unmute, but I don't have anything.
Okay. Janine?
Just a couple of things. One, the plan that's been put together with the committees looks amazing. It's definitely a monster to put together and to get all of those pieces running. So I think it's exciting to see what everybody comes up with, because there's really endless possibilities to be able to do things for our students. One thing that I wanted just people to be aware of is, I don't know if you guys have heard anything about Towns Riverview South. We have a number of students and families out there that have been affected by a boil water advisory for those students or for those houses. And it's going to be quite some time before that can even be fixed. So just something to kind of keep in mind, or if you hear of any resources that might be available for those families, just to kind of reach out and look for some things that might be helpful for them. And that's all I have.
Thanks, Janine. Alex, do you want to try again? Just for the record, Alex gave a thumbs up with a big smile. Well, I don't really have a lot either. Just probably echo what everybody says. I do think that we've probably learned some really awesome and innovative things through this process. I've been telling my kids that, maybe we needed this type of shakeup to make a system better. So exactly what Mark said, I'm sure there's been some really great innovative things that have come about during this time of crisis. So maybe we'll get something even better happening. And again, I'm just impressed with the work that gets done in such a short amount of time, and just appreciate all the hard work and dedication and I can't even imagine what goes into all of that stuff. So I just appreciate it so much, not just from district employees, but the community and the support and all that good stuff. So we'll see where this goes. And again, I'm just wishing everybody luck, because it just seems like a huge task, but I have every faith that we're going to come up with something amazing for our students and for our community. So just even hearing the opportunities tonight, I mean, there's just, it's going to be great. So with that, do we have anything else before I talk about the next board meeting? Everybody's good. Laura, I didn't miss anything. Okay.
Nope, I think you got everything.
Okay, so the next board meeting will take place on Thursday, June 11th, 2020 at 5:30 p.m. in the board meeting room at the Educational Support Center. With that, I will take a motion to adjourn.
Madam President, this is Laura. I move that we adjourn.
And can I get a second?
This is Janine. I second it.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor, we will do a vote.
Laura,
Aye.
Dana,
Aye.
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 Jennifer,
Aye.
Alex.
He gave a thumbs up and a smile.
Hey, a big thanks to everybody for your indulgence on the Zooms and doing these meetings via technology. You've really made this work really well. So thanks for all that. Hopefully soon we can get a little bit back to normal on board meetings too. So
Thanks, Steve, and thanks, Stephanie, and everybody over there. So thanks again, everybody. And I guess we'll see each other soon. Good night.
have a great night.
Have a good night,
Bye.
everyone.